Thank you very much. I'm thankful to the organizers, particularly the presenters from Globe, Professor Bob and Nisanka, and also the organizers from Institute of Soil and Environmental Sciences for the fertilizer company and the other collaborators. So are my slides visible and am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Sir, please continue. Your slides are visible. You're also audible.
Okay, thank you very much. So as the earlier speakers have established that nitrogen is key to food security and productivity, and also there are a number of environmental issues for inefficient use. So I will briefly discuss about nitrogen assessment of Pakistan. As two most important are the biggest challenges of this century facing the planet Earth is food security and climate action or climate change. And Sustainable Development Goal 2 and 13 are the most important goals. And these two goals are linked to all of the other goals in one or the other way. As nearly 1 in 8 of the people experience chronic hunger, that is 870 million people worldwide. And on the other hand, we have no rain or floods. So if we see, and from concluding from the previous discussions, it's very clear that nitrogen has a significant role in both of these. It is linked to food security. It is required for food security, and also inefficient use can cause the climate change and many other environmental or health issues. So briefly, sustainable nitrogen management is linked to many of these sustainable development goals like zero hunger, clean water and sanitation, life below water, life on land, climate action, good health and well-being, decent work and economic growth. So if we fail to stop nitrogen pollution, it could limit the safe operating margins for many other issues facing our planet Earth. Every time when we discuss about climate change, carbon dioxide is one of the words which comes in our mind. We do not think on nitrogen. So nitrogen pollution is the major issue. And recently, I'm very happy to share that for the Pakistan, we have published this book, Nitrogen Assessment, Pakistan as a Case Study. This book is actually a deliverable for South Asia Nitrogen Hub. And the idea for publishing of this book was conceived in the inception meeting of this hub, which was held in Nepal during 2019. And I'm thankful to many editors and your authors and co-authors who gathered the least available information, because the data is very less available, particularly for the Pakistan. So we have gathered the information which are available, and we have put it in the form of book. And we have pre-launched this book in our June webinar. I will briefly discuss some of the key points and the message out of this nitrogen assessment. So as discussed, nitrogen use has been increased significantly, and particularly from 1961 to 2014 or recent, it was less than 20 million, and it has increased more than 100 million. And very importantly, the increase has been abruptly in Asia. And if you can observe that the increase, there is a decrease in nitrogen use in Europe. And this can be linked very much to the increased population and also the production of the agricultural production. So nitrogen is very much linked to food security. And if we compare nitrogen use of Pakistan with the main South Asian countries and the world, you can see that there is a huge difference between the total nitrogen input and the total nitrogen uptake by the plants. So this huge gap is actually, you can say, resulting in huge increase in nitrogen surplus. This nitrogen surplus, if you can see for the world, it is about, you can say 50%, less than 30% is the total nitrogen use efficiency, 50%, and for the Pakistan is less than 30%. And 150 kg nitrogen per hectare may be the surplus, while for the world, it is about 60 kilograms nitrogen per hectare per year. So there's a huge difference. And at the same time, this is a great potential that we can enhance nitrogen use efficiency and we can reduce the environmental impacts, as well as we can improve the economic profitability of the farmers. So coming to particularly on Pakistan, the nitrogen input from 1961 to 2018 has been increased dramatically from 40 gigagrams of nitrogen per year to 3,447 gigagrams nitrogen per year from synthetic fertilizers. And manure application has been increased, but not very significantly. And resultantly, the emissions have been increased. And from 1961, the ammonia emission was 9.2 gigagrams, but now, 2018, the data was 758 gigagrams of nitrogen has been emitted as ammonia gas from fertilizers. From manures, from 62 to 309. So we are actually disturbing the nitrogen cycle. We are making this unbalanced. So if we see the nitrogen used per hectare and compare it with the global, Pakistan is among the countries which are using high nitrogen per hectare. Of course, the total nitrogen use may not be very much significant if we consider the global, but if we compare the nitrogen use per hectare rate, we are among the top maybe 7 or 8 countries, as we are adding 100 to 250 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, as the previous speaker has said that 159 kilograms of nitrogen we are adding per hectare. So there are a number of factors why this nitrogen use has been increased. Number one is we have to produce more food for ever increasing population. And on the same time, there are different dietary patterns have been changed. If we see the total nitrogen consumption per capita, it has been increased from 3 kilogram of nitrogen per capita per year to about 3.8 kilograms. And on the same time, if you see the total nitrogen consumption, this is for the Pakistan. It was less than 200. Now it is 800 gigagrams total consumption. And very interestingly, the nitrogen consumption from livestock products have been increased significantly because we are taking now proteins from livestock, from dairy animals. And our reliance for the proteins from crops has been decreased or stagnant. And this has increased, as Dr. Bob and also Nisanka has discussed, that the nitrogen use efficiency of the livestock sector is less than the crop sector. So if, as we have changed the dietary patterns, the nitrogen use efficiency has been decreased significantly. So coming to the livestock sector, the total manure excreted as in nitrogen contents per kilograms, there is a significant increase. But if you see the total nitrogen lost, it is also increased significantly. So the nitrogen percent lost has been from about 53%. So we see the gaseous nitrogen loss from Pakistan, from fertilizers, it is increased from about less than 50 gigagrams of nitrogen per year to about 600 as ammonia gas. For N2O and NOx, it is less than 100, about 100 gigagrams nitrogen per year from the fertilizer. And from manures, again, because the utilization of fertilizers and manures has increased. So the emissions have been increased, and which is very much correlated. And we see the conclusive from 1960-65, it was ammonia emission was 70 gigagrams, and now it is 1023 gigagrams per year. There is a huge environmental impact. Of course, the emissions from Pakistan are less than 1% of the global emissions, but we have to consider, as Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable countries which can be affected by the climate change. So the rate of nitrogen use has been increased, and resultantly the nitrogen use efficiency have been decreased. And it is about 23%, which we have published in 2018, this paper. And as this gap between the red line and the yellow line, this is the nitrogen harvested by the crops, which may be converted into the food or the feed. And this was the applied. So this much of the nitrogen is a surplus which may reside in the soil, and it can be leached, it can be volatilized, and there may be the gaseous losses in the form of N2O or NOx. So this slide also shows that the situation is deteriorating, but there is a huge potential. We can harvest this potential, we can bridge this gap, and we can improve productivity. So changes, nitrogen use efficiency have been decreased from 58% to 23%. And some of the pathways which we have discussed in this book, I will briefly discuss these 3 or 4. There is a need for a comprehensive nitrogen system analysis based on the concept of operations, which should include the identification and quantification of nitrogen components, processes, flows, actors, interactions, and interlinkages within and between different nitrogen systems. Because without proper assessment, we cannot do any better solution, we cannot give any better solution to the problem. So a comprehensive nitrogen system analysis is need of the time. And very much important is awareness among the general population. As I have discussed that every time we consider carbon dioxide, if we listen the word climate change, but there is a need to spread awareness among the general population, policy advisors, and legislators for explaining the meaning, purpose, targets, and actions of an integrated nitrogen management approach. Why we need sustainable nitrogen management. We need to spread this, you can say, slogan. So quantification of differences between nitrogen input and output of a system and the components of that system. And we have to think on environmental footprints analysis and cost benefit analysis of the nitrogen use. One of the least or the weak linkage is between research scientists, farmers, and policymakers, and there is a need for proper coordination between research scientists, farmers, and the private sector policymakers within the country and outside the country. And identification and application of best nitrogen use and the management practices. So as nitrogen is a global challenge, we are spreading our words, and we have produced a massive open online course, which is available free of the cost, and anyone can enroll. It is in English language and translated in Urdu. So we have translated it in Urdu with the help of South Asia Nitrogen Hub, so that common farmers or the layman can understand why nitrogen is important, how it links with food security, and how it links with the climate change, environment quality, loss and biodiversity, and the health issues. So please join hands to halve nitrogen waste by 2030, as it was declared in the Colombo Declaration, to save the planet. Thank you for my parent institute, University of Agriculture, Faisalabad, and South Asian Nitrogen Hub, and particularly the organizers. Thank you very much. This is all about the nitrogen assessment. This is a brief.